So again, my name is Sharnae Hearn Davis. My background is in social work and community development, but my passion is really to be committed to finding resources, right? And being that conduit to help under-resourced communities, and particularly African-American communities, be connected to opportunities and to resources in our community as a whole. As the founder of the Sisters Lifting As We Climb Network, in 2015, we launched as a personal and professional development support network for women of color. After the gender equity report came out in 2019 from the city of Pittsburgh and the University of Pittsburgh, it really hit me in my core that a lot of our work needed to shift towards advocacy. And I'm going to read one of the quotes that really, shook me to my core. 1/3 of Black women in Pittsburgh lives in poverty. This means Black women in poverty is higher than 85% of other cities across the nation. When I heard that and started to reflect on my own life, it was really crucial that I no longer just sit back to be complacent and really think about the influence that God has blessed with me, to really begin to think around how can I use my influence to create strategies to keep this conversation going on, not only on a local level, but also on a national level as well. From this conversation and the conversations with the women who participate in the workshops in our network, we shifted our mission to amplify our work. So our mission today is to serve as a conduit to advance economic mobility for Black women while amplifying their voices and visibility in the city of Pittsburgh and beyond. This new mission actually birthed one of the products that we're super proud to share about is our first book, which we are calling The Realities of Black Women, Dismantling the False Narratives of Black Women in America. This is a collection of expressions from 10 strong and courageous African-American women who live in the city of Pittsburgh. One's in Atlanta, Georgia, and one is Maryland. We currently have, our book is currently on pre-sale. But for this evening and the purpose of our conversation today, this book is really about challenging policyholders, leaders, and America at large to not just acknowledge the disparities and systemic oppression, but to stop and think about the role that they play or that you play in hindering the progression of Black women and their families as a whole. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it back over to Kaya to give me a thumbs up, and then we can start with our first question. If you look to the right, our first person up with Sister Rosemary Crawford, we're going to open up the first question, and I will put that in the chat as well, was to simply please tell us about yourself and why you are running for judge.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Sharnae, for all the good work you're doing in the community, the strategy work. We need people like you. I'm Rosemary Crawford. I'm running for Judge, Court of Common Pleas, and I'm running because as a lawyer, a mediator, arbitrator, and a Chapter 7 bankruptcy trustee, I've been a lawyer for 31 years. I went to Georgetown Law School, and during that time, I've seen quite an amount of injustice. I think that I can make a material difference at this time. We're in a transformative time where the Court of Common Pleas will likely have a 25% change. We need judges who are culturally competent, who are knowledgeable, experienced, and who can get the job done and be fair to everyone. I believe that it is so important to stop criminalizing and incarcerating the poor and minorities. And I do also believe that it's so important not have people in jail because they cannot afford bail. Cash bail has been used to criminalize and the poor and minorities. I think there are better ways. We can work with community organizations if there's a person at risk to make sure that there's not food insecurities, there's not housing insecurities, or language insecurities. I believe in mental health treatment over incarceration. I believe that our children should actually be groomed to be productive citizens and not part of the military-industrial complex. I mean, these things are so imperative. And this is a time, This whole nation has seen the differential treatment that people have had to endure. January 6th, we had people who literally tried to overthrow the government, and they have been released on their own recognizance. So people in our own communities who may be guilty, may have potentially been arrested for a traffic offense or something else, are in jail because they don't have $500 for bail. We've got to do better, people. I have been an attorney. Again, I have taught at the University of Pittsburgh. I've taught at community Allegheny as well. I have worked with Neighborhood Legal Services, where I was on their board, and Pennsylvania Legal Services, providing free legal services for the poor. I've used my program experience when I was Director of Legal Resources, the YWCA, to do a program, 100 Lawyers, to provide free attorneys for those who could not otherwise have an attorney. I've also worked in the community. I have been dedicated to public service, having worked with the Summit Against Racism, Urban League. I have worked with Gwen's Girls. I have mentored children and young adults. I have provided scholarships. I've written the Johnny Gambit's essay question for the last 5 years. I'm a lifetime member of the NAACP. I've also worked with BPAP. I have done things such as street law programs, given free advice, moot court programs to help our children understand the process. I mean, these things are important. Right now, we have jury pools that are so unfair because often when African Americans come to serve, they are kicked off with a preemptory strike just because of their race. These are things that need to be looked at. We need judges that have cultural competence, which I have taught. I have been trained on it, and I also taught corporations, college students, and other people at the YWC Greater Pittsburgh, and also as Employment Council, where I taught executives. These things are imperative. We have to do these things so that we can provide more opportunities for our children and for other people in our community. If I am elected judge, I would hope to go to juvenile, so that where I have had experience representing juvenile offenders, so that I can help groom them for success, or in criminal, where I can make sure we're not having people be treated like animals just because of their poor minorities. Thank you. I don't want to go over my 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary Crawford, Esquire. Next up, we have Mr. Bryan Malkin. Same question. Please tell us about yourself and why you are running for judge.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody putting this forum together. My name is Bryan Malkin. I'm running for one of 9 seats as a Court of Common Pleas judge. I live in the North Hills with my wife of 17 years and my 3 teenage daughters. I have 27 years of trial experience handling every type of dispute you could imagine for individuals, companies, and governments. I've received multiple peer reviews and accolades, including being a Pennsylvania super lawyer, and I'm recommended by the Bar Association for the job of trial judge. My undergrad work was at Washington Jefferson College, where I graduated with majors in computer science, mathematics, and philosophy with honors, and was then inducted in the Phi Beta Kappa Honor Society for my scholarship. I am a Franklin Park Borough Councilman and meet the call to my commitment to community service and pro bono work with action, not just promises. Over the years, I've represented individuals, businesses, and governments in court. I've fought for the rights of folks who are injured, disabled, discriminated against, and unemployed. I believe in fighting for the rights of the underprivileged and the underserved. We need progress in our courts and our communities, and if elected, I will bring it. I'm endorsed by the Stonewall Democrats and the Gertrude Stein Political Club as one of the Excellent 8, as well as a host of elected progressive officials, including County Councilwoman at Large Bethany Hallam and County Councilwoman Olivia Bennett and Anita Pritzia. The reason why electing a judge in this election is so important is because they will decide how folks in the criminal justice system are treated. That treatment includes sentencing and fines. The decisions that your new judges make to reduce the jail and prison population will affect everybody in the community. Black, nonviolent offenders have for years been disparately impacted by overzealous sentencing, fines, and technical probation violations. More in Pennsylvania and Allegheny County than other places, as Rosemary attested to. Folks who are poor, homeless, mentally ill, or have drug or alcohol dependency are not criminals, and putting them in jail is not humane or just. This practice has decimated families and communities in our county. Another element controlled by your next judges is the use of cash bail. It's obvious that cash bail is unfair to folks that have no resources. It creates a debtor's prison. We keep accused folks in jail while they lose their jobs, homes, and loved ones, spending over $100 per day to ensure that they return for a court date where the possible penalty does not include jail time. It's enough. Eliminating cash bail for nonviolent offenders is crucial. There is no income review before bail is imposed, and that makes it arbitrary and unfair. We need our judges to review bail decisions made by a district judge so we can get folks out of jail. We know that 90% of the defendants released of their own recognizance will return to the court date, so why keep them in jail? Another measure that will greatly reduce the jail and prison population is restorative justice, a system where victims are given a chance to meet with or communicate with first-time offenders. Restorative justice gives the victim a chance to be heard on how they've been injured by the crime. The process helps the offender understand the impact their actions had on the victim, creating accountability and the possible chance to make amends. The offender may work towards restitution or provide community service in exchange for that, all as part of a non-punitive sentence. We know that such programs in other parts of the country have greatly reduced repeat offenders from returning and helped to reduce the jail and prison population. To heal our communities and families, we should stop spending money on over-policing, punishment, and jail. End the school to prison pipeline, especially for Black girls who are disproportionately impacted by referrals to the criminal justice system by well-meaning folks that think that's going to help them. Putting money into education and social services that help heal is how we lower crime rates in our underserved communities, not more policing. Eliminating cash bail and restorative justice are powerful measures our courts need to accomplish now. And if elected, I will help institute these changes within the law and other humane and much needed measures. Again, my name is Bryan Malkin, and you can read more about me at my campaign at malkin4judge.com. If you want to be the seed for change in the courts and in your community, please vote for me in ballot position number 17. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Malkin, for sharing your stance and giving us more background information on why you are running for judge. Again, you can look into the chat and for any of his contact information if you're interested to stay and engage with Ms. Malkin's team and to support in his campaign. We were notified that Superior Court candidate Jill Beck actually has to leave early. So if the candidates do not mind, we are going to go with Jill next. And Jill, feel free to come on screen when you're ready and to tell us about yourself and why you are running for judge.
Thank you very much, Ms. Charnay. I appreciate this, and my apologies for having to leave early. I have the life of a statewide candidate, right? My name is Jill Beck. I am from the city of Pittsburgh. I live here with my husband and 2 children, and I am running for statewide Superior Court. The Superior Court, as you heard, is the Court of Appeals for criminal, civil, family, juvenile, and orphans court matters. Those are all areas where I practiced and represented clients. I started my legal career at Kids Voice, representing abused and neglected children. I had about 200 kids on my caseload at any given time, and these were clients aged birth to 21. So a lot of different needs, which translated into a lot of advocacy and a lot of time in court. I tried approximately 1,400 cases while there, and I was in the criminal court, civil court, family court, orphans court, and most importantly, though, I was in the Superior Court, filing appeals, defending appeals, and orally arguing before that court. So I really got to know the Superior Court, the law that goes into it, and the practice of that court from the litigant side. But I also know from the other side of the bench, having spent 10 years in the chambers of Christine Donahue, another Allegheny County jurist. I was with her for 6 years on the Superior Court, 4 years on the Supreme Court, and got just about the best on-the-job training that is available. I drafted over 500 decisions of the very kind that I'll decide when elected to the court, and got to be responsible for reviewing, analyzing, and making recommendations about all of the procedural rules for all of the courts that were going to be changed during the time when she was on the Supreme Court. So I know the black letter law, I know the law that goes into the court, I know the law that comes out of the court, and I also know all the procedural rules that govern the decisions of the Superior Court and the courts under its jurisdiction. When I made the decision to run, I had to leave Justice Donahue's chambers, but I found another job at Blank Rome, a firm that I selected because of its commitment to public service. It requires all of its attorneys to provide free legal services to people in need, which is something very appealing to me. I joined their firm, told them up front that I was thinking about pursuing a run, and they were enthusiastic, brought me on board in their civil litigation team where I represented businesses, financial institutions, and nonprofit organizations. But I continued on my path of public service, representing victims of domestic violence and protection from abuse actions, helping to protect our vote in our elections, helping people who are experiencing housing insecurity through the COVID crisis, doing research and advisory work for Ceasefire PA, and generally helping people without money get the same rights and protections as people who do. I did that on the civil side and the criminal side, in trial courts and in appellate courts across the country. One new pro bono project that I brought to the firm was partnering with our Allegheny County Public Defender's Office to represent people who were arrested following the murder of George Floyd and the protests that occurred last summer. We will Blank Rome after my partnership would provide evidentiary support and also second chair some of those trials to ensure that all of those individuals get full and fair representation and a fair trial. For me, it's all about equal and equitable access to justice. It doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, how you pray, who you love, what you're alleged to have done, or how much money you make. You get the same level of review and the same level of justice by the courts. It's the way I've always practiced, representing some of the most vulnerable members of our population. It's the way I've lived my life, treating everybody with kindness and respect. And these are the values I'll take with me to the bench. I've been highly recommended to be a Superior Court judge by the Allegheny County Bar Association. Pennsylvania Bar Association has also recommended me for the job. I know the court, I know the work. I'm passionate about what it does. I thank you very much for having me, and again, apologize for having to leave early, but greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you. For more information about my candidacy, please check out my website, jillbeck.com, or you can follow us on social media. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter all have the same handle it's Elect Jill Beck, and I also have an Elect Jill Beck YouTube channel. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Jill. We look forward to learning more about your campaign. Again, some more house rules. I know you all are busy people, but we want to make sure that the community at large just make sure that they're educated and informed. So if we can stay as close as to the alphabetical order as possible. Next up, we will have Judge Timika Lane. She also has another event, but after Judge Timika, we're going to go back to our alphabetical order, so to make sure that we do everything decency and with order. All right, thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I know that you are allotting 5 minutes. I will try to do it in way less time. My name is Timika Lane, and I was elected to the Court of Common Pleas in 2013. I currently sit in the Criminal Trial Division, and I am running for Superior Court. This court, you've already heard a lot about what the Superior Court does, and this court is so important to people, and it matters. I am the only judge running for the Court of Common Pleas. You've heard, for Superior Court, I'm on the Court of Common Pleas, Lord. I'm out in the park, and it's hot. You see, I was trying to wipe the sweat. But I am the only judge running for Superior Court, and I can't tell you why that matters. The Superior Court simply is an error-correcting court. They look at the trial court to determine where any error is made. Who best can do this than someone who has done it day in and day out, not only as a trial attorney, but also as a judge. I am the only one who's made decisions. I'm the only one who has taken an oath that every day when I zip up my black robe and I preside over cases, I take very seriously, because I know that my decisions have a direct impact on people's lives, not only the people before me, but people who love and care about them as well. And it matters. The Superior Court is often the final stop for most people in Pennsylvania. They heard 8,000 cases last year, 70% of which are criminal. And we know that Black and brown people are disproportionately affected by the criminal justice system, and it matters. 11 of the 14 judges currently on the Superior Court, they were all judges first, and that's because being a judge matters. As a judge, we've already maintained chambers. We're in court every day. We do careful research because we want to make sure we get it right in our decisions. I've authored hundreds of opinions, and I'm always being cited for my well-reasoned opinions that come back from the Superior Court. And it matters, okay? Because we need people on this bench who have not only the professional experience, and I have that. I was a civil arbitrator where I decided civil cases in a panel of 3, similar to the Superior Court. I did that for the 1st Judicial District before I was a judge. I worked as a public defender where I tried thousands of serious, complex felony matters. I wasn't just doing summaries. I wasn't doing just misdemeanors. I did serious felony jury trials before judges and juries. And I worked in the Senate in Pennsylvania, where I was the Democratic Executive Director for the State Government Committee. When we had that photo ID law, the crazy gerrymandering map, all that stuff came in under my watch. And I got to plan rallies. I got to make sure I drafted legislation. I drafted amendments to make sure that we minimize the impact that it would have on marginalized communities. And then as a judge, I've been very active on the bench and in the community, teaching civics. We know how important that is now more than ever. But we need a judge with real life experience because diversity matters. Not just the obvious that we have one Black judge, one judge of color out of the 31 appellate judges, but a diversity of life experiences as well. I am 1st generation college, 1st generation law school. I'm a single mom. I know what it's like to have to work multiple jobs. Even when I was a public school teacher, I was still working retail because I didn't make enough money. And I'm a cancer survivor. And I know what it's like to adjust to a new normal. And I suggest most people do when they also interact with our judicial system, whether it is divorce, child custody, child support. They've been a victim of a crime, accused of a crime, maybe something went horribly wrong with a medical procedure. Whatever it is, they too have to adjust to a new normal. And who we put in this seat matters. And I am humbly asking you for your support and for your vote, because I know with this one vacancy on the Superior Court, we can flip it this year and turn it blue. But I cannot do it without each and every one of you. And I did put all my, I'm gonna go back and put my information in the chat. So thank you guys so much. Judge Timika Lane for Superior Court, the people's choice.
Thank you, Judge Timika Lane. I want to reinstate a statement that you said, and I think it's crucial for our viewers who are watching to understand that judges really have the power to change the trajectory of someone's life. So we understand that the mayor's race in our city is one that is crucial right now, but also understanding that as many seats that we have up right now for judge of, Court of Common Pleas and Superior Court, when we start beginning about talking about justice and what justice looks like in our community, it's crucial that they go out and to vote. I'm
the only person of color running for Superior Court as well.
We make a note of that, but I can't influence the audience on who they should vote for. But up next, we have another judge that's currently on the bench as well, Judge Lori Dumas. Did I pronounce your last name correct? Is Judge Dumas with us?
I am not seeing Judge Dumas now. They did leave and then come back. Oh, no, we got Judge Maria McLaughlin entering again. They might be having some issues connecting.
Okay, so we will go, and next up is Amanda Green Hawkins, Esquire, and we will have Judge Dumas join once they join us.
Okay, I'm ready when you are. Well, good evening, everyone. I am Amanda Green Hawkins. I am running for Pennsylvania's Commonwealth Court. I live right in the city of Pittsburgh with my husband and our 2 children. They are both Pittsburgh public school students. And I have been a lawyer here in Pittsburgh with the Steelworkers Union for going on 20 years. And that certainly makes me uniquely prepared and uniquely qualified for the Commonwealth Court, because it's the court that handles appeals from our administrative agencies. And with my background for the past 20 years working for the largest industrial union in North America, we represent about 1 million workers and retirees throughout the public and private sectors of our economy. And I'm also one of only 2,000 or so attorneys in the entire country, recognized as a union lawyer by the National AFL-CIO. And it means something. It means that my career has been steeped in administrative law, doing hearings before administrative agencies at the state and federal level around the country, and also appealing those decisions from administrative agencies to federal and state courts around the country as well. And I'm sure that you want someone with experience and want to know more about what the court does. And when I say administrative law, it may not really mean anything to you. However, if I were to tell you that it means that when there were about 100 women who only spoke Spanish in the workplace, they couldn't speak English at all, and they were being taken advantage of by their employer, not paid their fair wages, and working in unhealthy and unsafe working conditions, that I was there to deal with the administrative agency to make sure that these women were able to get their fair wages, that they were able to turn the situation around in that workplace and fight for their dignity and respect. That's administrative law, working with these with the National Labor Relations Board or the Pennsylvania Labor Relations Board to make sure that people get their dignity and respect in the workplace. Sometimes it means that I am fighting for one person in the workplace, someone who may be at risk of losing their job because they're addicted to opioids. But because I've been doing this work so long, I know that they became addicted to opioids because they got hurt in the workplace and were prescribed the opioids to deal with the injury, the pain from the injury while they were out on workers' compensation. And when it's time to return to work, now no one wants to know their name, and a boss wants to fire them because they're addicted to opioids. Well, I'm there to fight for that person, to make sure that they are healing correctly, that they're getting the proper workers' compensation, and that when they want to return to work, that I'm there fighting for their dignity and respect in the workplace, fighting for their second chance. And sometimes it may mean that I am working and fighting on behalf of someone who operates a family child daycare home because she wants to provide affordable childcare to low-income mothers in her community, mothers who so desperately need their jobs, even though they may be low-wage workers. I'm there to help and fight for her to get her license to operate that family child daycare home back when the state takes it away. I'm there to go to court, to go to Commonwealth Court and fight for that license to be restored so that she can then return to providing that much needed service to families in her community. This is the work of the Commonwealth Court. This is the work that I've done. This is the court that affects not just your job, it can also affect your right to vote, your access to healthcare, and so many other issues. So you want to have people who understand what this court is about and with the experience to make those precious decisions to protect and preserve our rights here in Pennsylvania. And I'm sure you also want someone who's fair. I call it passing the fit test, someone who's fair. Like the fairness I had to show when I worked as a mediator and when I worked in chambers with a federal court judge as well as a superior court judge. I know you also want someone with integrity, the eye and fit, someone who's going to do the right thing regardless of all the noise going on around them. I certainly had to show integrity when I served on Allegheny County Council as an elected official, on the Port Authority Board of Allegheny County, and on the Community Task Force on Police Reform, doing the right thing despite all the pressures to do something different. And I know you're looking for someone with the right temperament, someone who's going to treat people with dignity and respect. And at a time when people are concerned about bias in our systems, in our judicial system, and we see we only have one person of color out of 31 appellate court judges, and people have been in our streets asking, is justice accessible or attainable for people who look like me? It's even more important that we have judges with the right temperament and treating people with dignity and respect. And that's what I'll bring to the Commonwealth Court. I have humbly asked you for your help and your support and your vote to get to Commonwealth Court. I've been rated recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association, as well as the Pennsylvania Bar Association. And I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak with you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Power behind your stance of what you shared. As a person who's worked in community, I feel almost ashamed that I don't know some of your faces before today. So I'm learning as we are in conversation. So I'm sure that our viewers is learning right with us as well. And again, please view the chat for all of everyone's contact information, from their websites to their Facebook links, and to their Twitter accounts as well. So up next, we have Judge David Spurgeon. Is Judge David with us?
I am. Good to see everybody. I am Judge David Spurgeon. I am one of the candidates for Commonwealth Court as well. There are 2 openings on Commonwealth Court, and I am running from Allegheny County as one of your Court of Common Pleas judges. And I am proud to say that in the last 5 years that I've served on your Court of Common Pleas in Allegheny County, I have never been overturned for a decision that I made on the bench. And I think that helped lead to my rating from the Pennsylvania Bar Association. So I'm the only candidate in the entire state for Commonwealth Court, Republican or Democrat, that received the top rating of highly recommended. And I like to tell people that because I'm a kid from McKeesport who went to McKeesport Area High School. And I try to go back and I let people know that, you know what, you can be a public school student from an area that might not be one of the top schools in the state, but you can still do what needs to be done, and you're just as good as anybody else. So I spent, as I said, the last 5 years on the bench in Allegheny County. I've been serving in the family division, where I deal with all issues pertaining to family, as well as a huge foster care docket that I deal with in the juvenile section. And I have been really liking doing that for the last 5 years. In fact, they've asked me to leave and go to the criminal division, and I've told them no several times. And that's because I spent 19 years in the criminal division, and I thought that I have gained more experience and more unique perspective to make myself a better judge by doing something that was completely and totally different than my background. But I did spend 19 years in the criminal court system, and I was in the DA's office. I'll be the first person to tell you I did not plan on staying that long. I went there to get some trial experience because a kid growing up from McKeesport, I had a lot of student loan debt when I graduated from college and law school. And I thought I would go get some trial experience and then go work in a law firm somewhere and make some money to pay back all these loans. But that didn't happen because I ended up falling in love with public service. And I fell in love with public service because I realized that I could make an impact and make a difference. I was a passionate advocate for our problem-solving courts, and I became the supervisor of our mental health court unit, where we identify people with mental health issues and recognize that there was a revolving door between the criminal justice system and mental health. And so we would get people out of the jail, because we know no one actually gets better sitting in a jail, get people out of the jail and use the money that was holding them in jail that cost $105 every single day just to have somebody warehoused, to use that money to give them the caseworkers that they needed, the support that they needed, the medication that they needed, to help them get housing, and basically try to address the underlying problem that was causing them to get involved in the criminal justice system, which was their mental health. And by addressing that problem, we were able to stop that revolving door. Based on the success of that, I helped create our Veterans Court for our county, which basically was modeled on the same thing as mental health court, where we realized that there were soldiers coming back with traumatic brain injuries and post-traumatic stress disorder. They were using drugs and alcohol to cope with those things. And because of that, they were getting involved in the criminal justice system. So by addressing that, we were trying to address the PTSD and the traumatic brain injury to deal with the underlying issue there, to stop that revolving door. The real reason I probably stuck around, though, is I became the lead prosecutor in our county for cases involving domestic violence. I became a national expert in the area. And I was recently on Court TV talking about the pandemic and domestic violence. And as we know the numbers of being reported are going down, but we know the incidents are on the rise. And I stuck around because I felt like I was giving a voice to victims of domestic violence. So typically, it was typically a woman that was the victim, although there are men, but it was typically a woman or a child. And anytime a woman or child was physically or sexually abused or murdered by somebody that they had a family relationship with, or told them that they loved them, I would handle that case. You'd also be surprised, there were a large number of animals that were also abused by people that use domestic violence as a tool to try to send a message to the person that they're battering, that they're serious. So I became an animal abuse prosecutor during that time as well. And that's the reason I stuck around. I stuck around for 25 years, and I stuck around that long, or I've been on the bench between the judge and a lawyer for 25 years. And I also serve as an adjunct law professor at Duquesne University. And I tell you this because I think it's important to understand that we have to have a wide array of people on the bench. We need to have that perspective that is very, very broad, and we have people coming from different aspects and doing different things from that. Will tell you that I believe it's important that we elect people from all neighborhoods. I serve on the Court of Common Pleas, which has 43 judges. I'm the only judge that actually lives in the Mon Valley, and I was the first judge elected there after 30 years. And, when I was actually appointed first, and my state senator, when we were going through the confirmation process, said, listen, if you don't have a voice at the table, that means you're probably on the menu. And for far too long, that region has been on the menu and hasn't had a voice. So I've been struggling to remain as a voice. I built a house in that same school district that I grew up in, McKeesport Area School District, because I wanted to be a positive role model and give back to kids that are there. Because when I was growing up, I didn't know lawyers. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, how I was supposed to go on, and where would I go to find out whether or not I should be applying for this or taking this test or doing any of those things. I had none of that background. So I wanted to stay there and be a role model. And I've been committed to making sure that when I'm hiring interns and doing things along those lines, I'm always looking for people in all communities, but I have a special eye towards kids in my own area because I know that they need to be lifted up like I should have been or could have been lifted up to try to give me some direction. And so, I joke and tell people my first year after law school, I didn't know I was supposed to get a legal job. I was a bartender because no one told me how to apply for a legal job. Well, I was in my first year. I thought I did it after the year was over, but it wasn't. It was many, many months before. So I tell people that.
We are at time, Judge
you.
Spurgeon. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. I can feel all of your passion oozing out through the screen. We appreciate it. For the interest of time, I just want to put it out there because we have a few more judges, but we have a few more questions as well. So if you can stay around, we will try to go a little longer so the community get to hear some more of your more of your answers and more about your passion behind your work, other than just who you are, right? So up next, I see we have Judge Sierra Street has joined us as well.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am in a car, sorry, traveling from one event to the next. I am Sierra Street. I'm a judge on the Court of Common Pleas in Philadelphia, and I'm going into my 8th year on the bench, and I am running for Commonwealth Court. But just to tell you a little bit about me, I come from strong working class roots. So my mother raised me. She's a nurse and an Army vet. She pushed me to get my education. My father's a truck driver. He also wasn't around as much, but he also pushed me to get my education. He wanted me to do better, and I tried to follow. I was an athlete and took my discipline to the classroom with me. I attended Howard University, like our VP, Ms. Harris, and while there, I interned at the United States Department of State. And I went on to law school after that because they were like, you have a big company, you should go to law school. And while I was in law school, I interned at the White House under the Clinton administration. And once I graduated from law school, I went right into public interest law, which is the area of law where you help people. You don't necessarily, make a lot of money. And I wanted to help people like my mother, the nurse. So I did that. I was a law clerk. I worked in family court. I took a job at the Judge's office, which was probably the pivotal moment in my career where I realized what I love to do, which was being in court and helping people. And I got to represent thousands of clients all day, every day. I wasn't their first choice, but I was their only choice at the time. And I did my best work to help them and also learned a lot, great training ground. And, it was probably there that I probably thought maybe one day I could become a judge, but it wasn't time yet. I went through a divorce while I was at that office and I had to take a job making a little bit more money, but still in the area of public interest. I took a job at a nonprofit in affordable housing where we service formerly homeless families and moderate to low income families to get housing in the city. And there I jumped from the criminal side to the civil side of the law. As a trial attorney, I was chief counsel for this nonprofit, and I got some experience in zoning. I was supervising the sale and development of residential and commercial properties. So I got experience in tax assessments, government rules and regulations, which is all involved with affordable housing, which is funded by the federal government. And it was there that I launched my candidacy for the Court of Common Pleas back in 2013, and it was a tough race. Not a lot of people agreed, with me running, but I ran and I won on my first try because I believed in myself and I had the help of good people who also believed in me. So shout out to all the local candidates who are running for CP. That's a tough race. Local races are tough. And once I was elected, I was assigned to the criminal division where I was actually selected to be the lead supervising judge of the Philadelphia indicting grand jury program, which houses all of our most serious cases, the ones where people are afraid to testify. And that's, all the ones you see on the news, the ones where people are being threatened, they won't come forward. And that program, even as a former public defender, I recognize the importance of that program, and I'm very proud of the work that we did there. I was also elected to be the chair of Judicial Council, which is a group of judges of color. And yes, your president judge, Kim Clark, is a member. And we did a lot of community service. We went around to local high schools and talked with students and helped them with their college applications. I created that college mentoring program for that group. And we mentored law students from Penn to Duquesne. We mentor students in the juvenile justice system. And I'm very proud of the fact that I was elected by my peers, some who are much more seasoned than me, to be the chair of this group. Now I'm assigned to the civil division, and the civil division, now I still handle bench trials, jury trials, just like I did in the criminal division. And I'm also handling statutory appeals involving government entities, which is the work of the Commonwealth Court. If there's an appeal on my level, it goes to the Commonwealth Court. And why am I running for the Commonwealth Court? Well, the question is, what do they do? And really, what don't they do? They handle school funding, unemployment compensation, workers' compensation, right to know, zoning. They handle election law, state probation, and parole appeals. So, I sent some people to state, upstate, and they always ask, when will I get parole? And I couldn't tell them because I have no control once we send them to the state institution. But the Commonwealth Court actually handles those appeals. And when I tell you there are 7 Republicans and 2 Democrats and no judges of color, that's a sad state of affairs for people, that you do send to state facilities, that those are the judges that they have to go before, who may not understand exactly what's going on with them. And that's why I chose the Commonwealth Court, because it's not fair and balanced. We know that these issues that I described are bread and butter issues. They are quality of life issues. They affect working class people the most, and all Pennsylvanians. And that's why I chose the Commonwealth Court. I am rated recommended by the Pennsylvania and Philadelphia Bar Associations. And if you forget what the Commonwealth Court does, I narrowed it down to the 4 E's: education, employment, elections, and economics. And that's why I'm running. And I am here to humbly ask for your support. Obviously running statewide, we need all of the support. I just was in Allegheny County this past week, was with Rosemary and several other candidates at an event, and I love coming out there at the ball. People say ignore the West because they only do the West, but I don't care. I'm coming back probably before May 18th, so because I just have a ball every time. So thank you for having me, and I hope to meet you guys in person.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please be safe while you are on the road. Again, so much information is packed in what you just shared. And thank you for all of your community work, not only on the bench, but outside of the bench as well. So to each of you, that is definitely honorable, and we honor you for your service. We see that Judge Lori Dumas has joined us again. Judge, are you back?
Is she on mute? There you go.
All right, you're unmuted.
Hi, everyone. Hello, please forgive me. The world is turning upside down now that Philadelphia has decided to hold in-person meetings. Before we could jump from Zoom to Zoom, and now it's not so. So I will just be a few minutes. I have been listening to the great conversations and the presentation by the candidates, but my name is Judge Lori Dumas. I'm running for the Commonwealth Court. I've been on the bench now here in Philadelphia for 19 years. And for me, it is just having the opportunity to take the impact that I've had the privilege of making over this past 19 years to the next level. As you know, Commonwealth Court, I know that Judge Street told you all about Commonwealth Court, so I won't bore you with that. But what I will say is that the time that I've been on the bench, I have really learned what it means to be a trial court judge. I've learned what it means to be a judge for the people. I've learned to listen, and I've listened more and to talk less. And I have learned that our positions as judges are gifts. They are not guarantees, but we are privileged to be able to sit and to render judgment and decisions that are not supposed to hurt people, but are supposed to do just the opposite. I believe in community. I believe that community and courts should collaborate in order to make life better for the citizens that we serve. And I would like to be able to let the rest of the state see, that Philadelphia does have judges who care and has judges that want to fellowship and want to share ideas and perspectives, with other judges from around the state, particularly on this court, and render decisions that are fair and balanced. I have served as a corporate leader. I've served as a director for a nonprofit. I came to the bench with a lot of experience, but the experience in the law is one thing, but it is who I am as a person that you should really be more concerned about. And the reason why is because in the law, there's a lot of gray area, right? There is the law, but then there's gray area. And it's in those gray areas that who that judge is, where that judge is from, what that judge believes, values at their core is really what matters. And that's going to make the difference between a decision that is based solely in the law and a decision that's based in the law, but also a decision that's based upon what's right and what's just. And so I would like to go to this court because there are no people of color on this court. I believe that I bring a unique perspective as a seasoned judge who is firmly rooted in the community. I'm a mom, I'm a wife. I also bring a personal investment to this court because I'm a mom with a child that learns differently. I've had to fight the school system to make sure she had the education that she deserved. That happens in this court. I also, when my mom was dying from cancer, I was the one that was charged with her care and making sure that she got the care that she needed to age and to die with dignity, fighting the healthcare companies so that she could get the benefits that she deserved. Once again, issues for the Commonwealth Court. And so for me, it's, like I said, it's a natural progression of impact, a natural progression of service, but I also have personal investments in the issues of this court and making sure that the decisions that come out of this court represent full, balanced, and just decisions from a court that looks like all of us and not just a privileged few. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm sorry that I'm outside, and I'm sorry that I'm outside, but I do thank you for the opportunity to be here with you tonight.
Thank you again for joining us. The power of technology is we can be anywhere, and we wouldn't have known if you didn't tell us.
Oh, thank you.
Up next, we have I won't say last but not least, because we have two more, but you two have been patient. So we are super excited to come to you next. Up next, we have Bryan Neft, who is running for, Superior Court. So Bryan Esquire running for Superior Court.
Thank you, Charnay. It's great to be here. My name is Bryan Neft, and I'm running for judge of the Pennsylvania Superior Court. I live in Mount Lebanon, where my wife and I have raised our 3 children and our 2 German Shepherds, the last of which is a rescue German Shepherd. I am a lifelong Pittsburgher. I started my career here over 31 years ago. I went to law school in 1986, and my inspiration for going to law school was my mother. When I was in high school, my mom gave up her career as a home economics teacher and decided she was going to become a lawyer. And she started at Duquesne University's night school. And every day before she went off to class, she had our breakfast ready for us, our lunches, and dinner was waiting for us in the fridge. And she would go off to class. And I had the opportunity to see her in classes that when I picked her up in the evenings, and I saw her in study groups at our house. And I really got hooked on the law just by watching that give and take and that banter back and forth. My mom still practices today, and it's been a really grateful experience because I still get to talk to her about legal issues that I'm working on, and we try to help each other where we can. When I came back to Pittsburgh after law school, I began my career clerking for a judge on the Pennsylvania Superior Court, which is the same court that I'm seeking election to. And I drafted hundreds of decisions for my judge on all of the types of cases that go before the Pennsylvania Superior Court. And in my practice for the last 25 years, I have practiced in front of the Pennsylvania Superior Court many times, and I practiced in front of its sister court, the Commonwealth Court, and I practiced in front of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And in addition, I practiced in 30 different counties across the Commonwealth. And I understand the diversity of the citizenry in the Commonwealth, but knowing that everybody's entitled to the same thing when they come to court, a full and fair opportunity to have their case heard and full and fair access to the judicial system. And that's what I bring to the table. And I could talk more about my qualifications through my practice, but I really want to talk about some of the things that have been important to me that come up outside of my practice, but are part of the judiciary and part of the profession of law. I've always said that a judge needs to be a public servant first and foremost, but should also be a leader and a role model. And I have worked hard as a leader in the Allegheny County Bar Association for many years to promote access to justice and elimination of discrimination and bias in the profession of law. And I've worked in the community raising millions of dollars for hunger relief for children and families in Allegheny County. But I want to talk to you about a few of the things that I've done. So in the Bar Association, I've been a member of what's called our Gender Bias Subcommittee for many years. And that's a committee of judges and practitioners that field confidential complaints from individuals that believe they've suffered gender bias in our profession. And with their consent, we go to the offending source and we tell them they're wrong. We tell them they need to rectify the situation, and we tell them they need to atone for the situation through education or otherwise. And in that regard, we've gone to jurists and practitioners, not just in Allegheny County, but in other counties where our lawyers are involved, to speak truth to power, because there's no place for discrimination or bias in the profession of law, in the judiciary, or in society as a whole. I've also advocated from the Bar Association the passing of our Rules of Professional Conduct 8.4G, which prohibits discrimination and bias in the practice of law. And I've worked very hard in the Allegheny County Bar Association to expand our first-year summer clerkship program for people of color and for the LGBTQ community to make sure they have opportunities after their first year of law school to work in a law firm setting or in a legal setting, so that they're much more competitive looking for those coveted second-year law jobs. I've also worked very hard for access to justice. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania appointed me to the IOLTA board in 2009, and I served as the chair of that board in 2014, 2015. And I'm proud of the work that we did to expand access to justice and stretch every dollar to maximize the number of people that could get legal services when they couldn't otherwise afford it. A priority of mine is access to justice going forward. And I think as a role of a Superior Court judge lends itself to having a voice in that regard. You know, we spend 3 years in law school and then a lifetime honing our skills to be able to make arguments in court. Somebody who has to go it alone without that training or experience is at a significant disadvantage. So I'm committed to expanding access to justice, especially for those facing critical life issues such as healthcare, housing, and food needs. And as I said before, I've also worked in the community, raising millions of dollars for hunger relief in Allegheny County through the Attorneys Against Hunger program. I've always said no child should ever be hungry and no family should ever be insecure in their food needs. And I've done all other work in the Jewish community for social service programs that are there for everybody in the community, whether it's immigration issues, whether it's housing, whether it's aging issues. I've been there and I support those efforts. And I think I'm ready to take it one step further, and I'm ready to go. So I thank you so much for having me here today, and I'm happy to stay and answer more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan Neft. We appreciate you. And Judge Maria McLaughlin, you can jump right in.
Thank you so much. And I am Judge Maria McLaughlin, and I am the Democratic nominee for our state's highest court, the Supreme Court. And I come from a family of immigrants, and I was the first one in my family to attend college. I graduated Penn State University by working 3 part-time jobs and a partial cheerleading scholarship. And so graduating from college was a big deal in my family, and really the only thing that was expected and hoped and dreamed of for me. And so the fact that I am running for our state's highest court certainly is not anywhere that I ever imagined I would be, let alone already a statewide elected judge. So I have over 29 years of legal experience. I started out in the district attorney's office in Philadelphia fighting for kids. And I think one of the programs I'm most proud of in that office was that I started a program with the ACLU and the courts where there's court-appointed counsel for civil matters. There never was before. You could go to jail for not paying your child support, but there was never a right to counsel. And so I made sure that that changed. And now that program is still in effect today. But I always say the scariest thing I ever had to do in that office was resign to run for judge because I was a divorced single mom with 2 boys and 70 vacation days in the bank. And it's exactly what I did. I said, I'm going to lead by example, and I resigned. And then just weeks later, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And I had lost my dad early on, and I said I wasn't going to do it. So I was not going to circulate petitions. I needed to take care of her. And unbeknownst to me, my mom stood outside Rittenhouse Park in Philadelphia and got me every single signature I needed to be on that ballot for Court of Common Pleas. And she came home and said, "You're running for that seat." And I did, and I won. And I sat on that court for 6 years. And in 6 years, I was a single mom and never missed a day of work. And I never had a decision overturned. So I think that speaks volumes as not only what kind of a judge I am, but who I am, what kind of person I am. And so from there, I went on to the Superior Court and ran for that. And I said, why not? And with that same mom, we campaigned up and down her chemo lounges at University of Pennsylvania because the doctors were from all over and the nurses and the patients. But the most important thing I did, and I was the only one that did it, not any other statewide candidate in 2017, spent time in all 67 counties. That's important. The same reason I'm on this Zoom and I'm having anxiety because I'm supposed to be speaking 2 other places at 7 o'clock. But out of respect, if I'm going to ask you to support me and to spread the good word, well, boy, I owe it to you to show up. And I did that in all 67 counties when I ran for Superior Court, but also because I represent all 67 counties. So I am highly recommended by the Pennsylvania Bar. I'm highly recommended by the Philadelphia Bar Association. I am ready to go. I also think it's important to note that I have no one running against me on the Democratic ticket. No one. And so that's kind of unique and odd. Usually it's the Republican Party who doesn't have anybody running against them, and they do have a primary election. So I need all the support that I can, and I'm hoping to humbly ask for your support. So thank you so much for affording me the opportunity to introduce myself, but I am Judge Maria McLaughlin for Supreme Court. Thank you.
Charnay is on mute.
Thank you. So I was talking away. So I said, thank you to everyone for joining us. This has been powerful and packed, and we understand you have another commitment. But if you can stay, feel free to stay with us. So again, our goal is to be no later than 7:15. And we're just gonna go back from the top as well with this final question. And Bryan, Mr. Neft, you touched on it briefly. You added into the statement of the access to justice, right? So our question for you and for everyone is, what do you perceive to be the greatest obstacle to justice?
I could probably put it in very simplistic terms, but I think the greatest obstacle is money in a big sense. We need to allocate more money to being able to provide good attorneys that can represent individuals that need help that otherwise can't get it. I mean, as part of the IOLTA board, which I touched on before, we worked hard to stretch every dollar that we could get to make sure we could maximize the number of services. But understand something, in 2008, we had a huge crash in our market, in our economy, and interest rates tanked. And the IOLTA board, which provides that funding, their funding source went from about $14 million a year down to $3.5 million. And we had to, we basically, went back to our agencies and we made sure that they were running as efficiently as possible, and increase services where we could. And we also went out to the Pennsylvania legislature, as well as, lobbied heavily with our federal legislators to make sure we could preserve all the funding that was necessary to ensure access to justice. But we need more money. And, it was never more critical than when our previous president tried to zero out all of those dollars for legal aid programs. But we know we need to do better. And I will tell you, I'm a staunch advocate of changing our rules of professional conduct for lawyers to require pro bono service. Right now, it's not required. And if we had each attorney in this state performing at least one pro bono case, we wouldn't have this problem. So I'm ready to take that step and make that and advocate for that.
Thank you. And just to mention, I jumped right to the question. You will have 1 minute time. So, and again, Kaya is keeping our time track as well. So Rosemary Crawford, Esquire.
Yeah, thank you, Charnay. Racism, bigotry, and poverty are the biggest obstacles to real justice. I will note, I'll just throw in here, I am highly recommended by the Bar Association based on my preeminence in the law, and also I believe it's because of my public service and my temperament. It is imperative to have judges who understand the consequences of money and privilege and how that's used against the people. And if elected, I'll do things to make justice more accessible to the people, like have actual Zoom hearings in certain circumstances. to try to expand diversionary programs so that if you are a first offender and you complete a program or get treatment, then you won't have a criminal record. And also, I would like to do things like try to have better forms on the court website. So if you don't have an attorney, you can complete them and then you have access to judge. And I would encourage pro se courts. So those are some of the things I think would help get real access to justice, but not deciding a case based on how somebody's dressed, who their lawyer is, and how much money is in their pocket. I mean, that's our obstacles to justice. Is Charnay on mute again? I think.
Thank you. Bryan Malkin, you're next.
Well, I don't want to belabor the point, but it is important to say that obstacles to justice include not having enough money in the system, and they also include explicit and implicit bias. That's clear from all the studies that have been done. Some of the bias, of course, is from generations of bias and prejudice, and those things are not going to be easily erased. But if we put somebody on the court who's actually aware of the problems that were created by the generational bias and is looking to make certain that it's stamped out in their courtroom, they're going to be able to make a difference in the courtroom and in the community. When I first started running in 2019, I did a deep dive into all of the literature about implicit and explicit bias. I read a bunch of law review articles and journal articles, and what I found out was that unless you know about it, you can't do anything to make the change. So I educated myself about it, and I'm ready to make that change in my courtroom so we can get rid of bias.
Thank you, Bryan Malkin, Esquire. I'm looking on the screen to make sure that we didn't miss anyone. Has everyone?
I think most of the other state candidates had a competing
commitments, yes.
Yeah, so we were so grateful to have them though, as well as Bryan, who stayed.
I would just like to mirror what both Rosemary and Bryan said. I think their points are very well taken. You know, there is a lot of bias that's systemic in the system, and it needs to be eradicated. And you know, as a leader in the Bar Association, I've worked hard to really require that type of training of our judges, and we've made it, you know, mandatory. So it is a critical component as well.
Thank you. In close, so that brings us to our closing time. We won't keep you too much longer, but I would like to close us out with a quote by Kofi Annan. That quote reads, "The battle for freedom and justice is never hopeless, but is never finally won. Every morning, we must wake up ready to fight again." So on the behalf of the community, we thank you for waking up and putting yourself out on the front lines to fight, but a call to action for you as well on the behalf of the community. As we are oftentimes on the front lines, whether it's the protests or whether we're on our job, we really need, and I've just noticed that I'm off of video, so I apologize. We really need, I don't like using the word allies. We need sponsors, we need mentors, we need everyday people who really care other than just your role, but really care about seeing systemic changes at the root within our institutions. So what you shared all today, you all shared that that is who you are. You shared about your integrity. You shared about your character as an individual. You shared about your commitment to the work. As you continue to go on your journey, I just charge you again to really think around, what else can you do? If and when you're elected, fingers crossed, that you will be able to be in a seat of influence to take your influence to another level to really help and change the trajectory of people's lives for the betterment. So in closing, that is all for what I have. Thank you again for having me. Thank you again for your participation. And we look forward to doing this again. I really love this. I think we may be on to something. Let's keep these going and keep these conversations going. I learned so much.
Bye.
This was great.